New York carried the sound of risk like a second siren. Taxis flashed, crosswalks shouted. I timed my breathing to the lights because it steadied my hands. My name is Dr. Emily Hart, and I collect curses. People come to me when the ground under their lives turns slick. I take what they cannot carry and pay in fatigue, headaches, and a metallic taste that lingers after the job ends. At noon, a black sedan lifted me out of Chinatown and ferried me into Midtown Glass. The assistant from Cole Enterprises sat beside me like a sealed envelope. He offered a fee without negotiation and spoke my name as if it were already on a contract. The powerful become efficient when they are frightened. Cole Tower rose like a blade. The elevator whispered us upward until the doors parted on a room that preferred horizons to walls. A man stood with his back to the windows. When he turned, pressure filled the air, the weather of a person who has learned to expect impact. Ethan Cole did not look like a victim. He looked like a verdict. Dr. Hart, he said, do you repair superstition or statistics? I repair patterns, I said. You seem to have one. 7 days, he said. 7 public failures. A sprinkler flood during a vote. A server collapse during a demo. A glass door that split along a seam. Yesterday, a senator's pen exploded during a signing and ruined the only memorandum. I do not propose theology. I propose correlation. Prove me wrong and failure. I am not a priest, I said. I am a plumber. If something leaks, I will find the pipe. Begin, he said. The assistant closed the side door. The office exhaled. I crossed to the desk and felt it at once. The fine grit of misfortune most people notice only after it becomes accident. A bowl of fruit sat beside a carafe of water. I placed 2 fingers near the bowl and pulled a thread of air across my palm. A blackberry bled a thin purple tear. Do not eat anything sliced in this room, I said. I do not eat during meetings, Ethan said. I prefer my hunger to belong to the next task. I asked him to sit on the couch facing the window. I sat opposite and reached for his left hand. His pulse was steady, but the current beneath it bucked like a cable under strain. I closed my eyes and took a slow breath. The first surge arrived with the taste of chlorine and the echo of someone shouting down a hallway. I guided it into my chest and let it cool there. The second surge carried the scent of overheated metal and a red blinking light. I took that one too and kept the nerves from rising. A third, thinner pulse carried the scratch of paper tearing at a signature line, a meeting room full of eyes trying not to stare, the feeling of being made the center of a story one did not write. I drew that into myself until it thinned and faded. When I opened my eyes, Ethan watched me with the care of a pilot reading a storm map. I raised my right hand and drew a slow rectangle in the air over his sternum, a pattern that interrupts the way a curse breathes. The room grew warmer. Outside, clouds parted and threw a sheet of light across the river. The carafe on the credenza cracked along its spine. Water spilled in a narrow river. Ethan did not flinch. He fetched a towel, pressed down until the river stopped, then lifted the towel to show a neat triangular tear. These towels are allergic to purpose, he said. Please do not fire anyone today, I said. When a pattern begins to break, it thrashes. You will want to punish proximity. His eyes softened. How bad is it? You are carrying more weight than one life produces, I said. Bad luck usually moves like a draft through a doorway. Yours moves like a locked door being kicked from the other side. Meaning someone is kicking, he said. Meaning, I need proof, I said. Give me 30 minutes without interruptions. Cover the mirrors. Sit where I tell you. Speak only when I ask. He nodded once. I resumed the work. Threads of intent ran through the office like hairline wires. They converged on places most hands would touch without thought. A drawer pull, the arm of a chair, the button that summoned an assistant. I skimmed the air above each and found the same residue. Not fear or anger, but a cool curiosity testing limits. Who was here this morning? I asked. My cousin, Ethan said. Harper Quinn. He presented a proposal that sounded like a partnership and felt like a trap. The name pressed against the residue like a key. The ceiling light flickered, then stilled. The city sharpened. This will require your calendar, your house, and your presence, I said. I cannot peel this away from a distance. I will also need to see rooms you consider private. In exchange, he said, you will make this stop. In exchange, I will try with the full strength I can safely use, I said. If it is not enough, I will say so. He sat back, and the lines in his shoulders lowered a notch. You will have what you need. A tremor moved through the floor as if the building cleared its throat. The bowl slid half an inch. A blackberry rolled, then halted under my palm. The tremor passed. I felt a lift in my chest, the relief that follows the first right answer after a run of wrong ones. We walked to the elevator in silence. In the lobby, a child pressed her hands to the glass and laughed at her own smudges. The air leaned toward her small joy and then, because I was there, leaned back. Outside, the assistant opened the sedan door. Ethan stood with the city sliding by in ribbons of yellow and chrome. Doctor, he said, do you require a retainer? I require 30 minutes tomorrow morning at your residence, I said. No assistants, no uncovered mirrors, no knives on counters. I require your trust for exactly that long. He nodded. You will have 30 minutes. Sometimes that is all fate needs, I said. The car door closed. The engine murmured. I breathed in the cool edge of the river and tasted metal fading on my tongue. When curses move, the avenue drops a note and the streets hold their breath. A cloud above the tower decided not to break. I went home to sleep, the kind of sleep that heals no one but allows the healer to try again tomorrow. Morning arrived without apology. New York does not soften for exhaustion. It only replaces one hum with another. I woke with the residue of last night still pressed against my skin, a faint tremor under my ribs, the echo of the black threads I had drawn from Ethan Cole. The taste of metal had dulled to iron and coffee. I rinsed my face 3 times and waited for my reflection to look less like a witness. At 8 sharp, a car from Cole Enterprises stopped outside my apartment. The driver offered no greeting, only a quiet gesture toward the open door. When people fear misfortune, they become economical with words. I slid into the back seat, folded my coat across my lap, and watched the city pass in slices of steel and light. Every traffic light turned red before we reached it. Even the timing of Manhattan seemed to bow to Ethan's condition. The Cole residence occupied an entire glass floor overlooking the East River. Its view was unbroken, its silence rehearsed. The security guard nodded as if performing a ritual he did not believe in. Ethan met me at the door, his shirt sleeves rolled to the elbows, his expression balanced between fatigue and calculation. Dr. Hart, he said. My housekeeper dropped an entire tray of crystal this morning. None of the pieces were mine, but all the shards found my feet. I looked down. A thin bandage circled his ankle. You are leaking probability, I said. Until I contain it, the accidents will seek you like gravity. He gestured toward the living room. Then let us attempt to rewrite physics. I stepped into the center of the room and felt the air shift. Misfortune was no longer a whisper, it was a chord vibrating through the furniture. A mirror above the fireplace caught the light, then cracked from corner to corner. Ethan flinched but did not step back. I asked him to sit and placed my small case on the table. Inside lay 6 polished stones, each inscribed with a sigil older than arithmetic. I set them in a circle and took his hand once more. His pulse fought beneath my fingers, quick and uneven. The room darkened. My breath aligned with his. I drew the first wave of misfortune into myself. It came with the sound of collapsing glass and the smell of burnt circuitry. Images flooded my mind. A conference table splitting, a phone ringing with bad news, a man alone among success that refused to stay intact. You keep everything controlled, I said quietly. That is why it rebels. He looked at me as if I had spoken an intimate secret. Control is how one survives in my family. Perhaps, I said. But luck is not an employee. It quits when managed too tightly. A lamp flickered, then steadied. The stones hummed softly. I felt the weight in my chest lighten for a moment before another surge hit stronger, colder, deliberate. Someone had tied the curse to him with precision, layering energy inside emotion, using guilt as the hook. The texture of the magic was not random. It was designed by a mind that understood both power and resentment. I opened my eyes. You said your cousin Harper visited your office yesterday? Yes, Ethan said. He left a proposal and a pen. The pen exploded during a signing ceremony. I assumed coincidence. Nothing about you is coincidence, I said. Where is the pen now? In the study. He led me down a hallway lined with portraits that watched without blinking. The study smelled of cedar and paper. On the desk lay the ruined pen, its barrel split open like a seed pod. I reached for it and felt the hum of residual intent. Whoever placed this spell used something subtler than curse-work psychological influence, interlaced with energy signatures. It was both science and sorcery, logic and spite. Someone is manipulating the probability field around you, I said. They are turning your natural luck into a feedback loop of failure. Can it be undone? His voice was low, almost weary. It can be contained, I said, but not erased until we locate its anchor. Oh, he leaned against the desk. You speak as if this were weather. It is weather, I said, only with purpose. For a long moment, we stood in silence. Outside, rain began to trace fine lines down the windows, though the forecast had promised Sunday. The sound softened the room. Ethan's posture eased just slightly. I saw the man beneath the reputation, the exhaustion of someone who had carried too many disasters alone. The arrogance I had seen in his office was armor, not nature. Do you ever remove a curse without it touching you? He asked. No, I said. Balance demands a vessel. Then who removes yours? I smiled without warmth. No one. I live with the residue. He studied me, and something in his gaze changed curiosity, shifting toward respect. What would happen if the residue became too heavy? I would disappear, I said simply. Like fog at sunrise. The rain thickened. Lightning stitched across the sky. One of the windows shuddered. Ethan moved toward it, but I raised a hand. Stay still, I said. I walked to the glass, pressed my palm against the surface, and whispered the syllables that ground unstable energy. The vibration eased. The storm outside calmed. When I turned back, Ethan was watching me as if the city had rearranged itself around an answer he did not yet understand. You believe now, I said. I believe something extraordinary is happening, he replied. Whether it is science or magic, I no longer care. Then you are ready to help me, I said. From this moment, you will follow every instruction I give. No shortcuts, no explanations to anyone, especially your cousin. I need access to your family archives, your corporate logs, and the blueprints of this apartment. If I am correct, the curse is woven through your surroundings. He nodded once. You will have everything. The lights flickered again, softer this time, like a creature sighing before sleep. I gathered my stones and placed them back in the case. My limbs felt heavy, my pulse slower. Ethan poured 2 glasses of water and handed one to me. Our fingers brushed, and the faint shock that passed between us carried neither fear nor electricity, only recognition. You absorb other people's darkness, he said. Does it ever frighten you? All the time, I said. The fear keeps the door closed once I finish. He looked out at the river, gray and restless. I have lived my whole life building walls against chaos. Perhaps that was the first mistake. Chaos cannot be blocked, I said. It must be redirected. And you will teach me how? If you listen. The silence that followed was almost gentle. Somewhere deep in the apartment, a clock resumed ticking, marking the rhythm of normal time. The curse had not vanished, but it had retreated, watching from a distance. For now, that was enough. When I left, the rain had stopped. The driver opened the door without a word. As the car pulled away, I glanced up at the tower of glass receding behind me. One light remained on, a steady amber square in a grid of darkness. Ethan Cole stood there, a silhouette against his own reflection. And for the first time since meeting him, the city around him did not seem cursed. It seemed awake. The coal estate stood at the northern edge of the Hudson, a place built not for living but for remembering power. The gates opened before the car touched them, as if the house already knew my name. Gravel crunched beneath the tires in a rhythm too precise to be chance. I had been invited here to meet the patriarch, Walter Quinn, yet I felt more like a trespasser entering an old cathedral where every whisper echoed with judgment. Ethan greeted me at the entrance. The morning light turned the edges of his suit to silver, but there were shadows beneath his eyes that even wealth could not hide. My grandfather insists on meeting the woman who, in his words, is trying to rearrange fate, he said. He believes every story deserves a skeptic. I welcome skeptics, I replied. They are the best witnesses when the impossible happens. Inside, the house smelled of varnish and memory. Portraits of generations watched from the walls, their painted eyes bright with entitlement. The air was thick with the quiet noise of money clocks ticking in different rooms, a distant hum of temperature control, the clink of crystal being polished somewhere out of sight. Every sound belonged to the past. Walter Quinn sat in a high-backed chair beside the fireplace. His body was thin, his posture still royal. A cane rested across his knees. When he looked at me, I felt the weight of decades spent believing only in effort. So, you are the doctor who heals bad luck, he said. A convenient occupation for the modern age. I do not heal it, I said. I move it. He smiled faintly. And where do you place it once you move it? Nowhere permanent. Misfortune is like water. It must keep flowing, or it rots. The old man studied me for a long moment, then nodded as if testing the sound of my voice against some private memory. My grandson tells me strange things happen when you are near, he said. Perhaps that makes you useful. Perhaps it makes you dangerous. You catball. Ethan cleared his throat. Grandfather. Walter raised a hand. I am too old to be polite, Ethan. Danger is the only honest currency left in our family. He turned back to me. You will dine with us tonight. You may observe as you wish. Consider it an experiment. The dinner table was long enough to host a negotiation. Harper Quinn arrived late, his smile too sharp to be sincere. He was younger than I expected, charming in the way that conceals calculation. When our eyes met, I felt the same cold vibration that had lingered in Ethan's office. The air around him shimmered faintly like heat above asphalt. So, you are the infamous Dr. Hart, Harper said as he took his seat across from me. Ethan has been very enthusiastic about your methods. I treat phenomena, not faith, I said. Enthusiasm does not influence results. He poured himself wine, the movement graceful and rehearsed. And what do you see when you look at our dear Ethan? A curse? A victim? Or simply a man addicted to excuses? Neither, I said. I see a man carrying weight that does not belong to him. Harper's smile widened. Careful, doctor. In this family, misplacing weight can be dangerous. The meal began. Every fork clink sounded like punctuation to a sentence I could not yet read. The servants moved with precision, their steps synchronized as if trained by the same invisible conductor. I tasted the air more than the food. The vibration of misfortune was growing stronger, building beneath the polite conversation like a second heartbeat. Walter lifted his glass for a toast. To blood, he said, the only bond that never breaks. The lights flickered. A chandelier trembled. For a breath, every candle bent sideways, flame stretching toward Ethan. Then the entire fixture dropped. I moved before a thought could intervene, dragging Ethan sideways as crystal rained down. The crash roared through the dining hall like thunder trapped indoors. When the last shard settled, silence returned. A fine mist of dust floated through the air. Harper's expression did not change. He stared at the ruin, then at me, with mild curiosity. How fortunate that you are seated beside him, Dr. Hart, he said. Fortune had little to do with it, I said. The pattern aimed to strike. Walter rose slowly, gripping his cane. Enough for tonight, he said. Ethan, escort our guest to the West Wing. She will stay under this roof until I decide otherwise. I wanted to protest, But Ethan's glance told me this was not a request. The housekeeper led me down a corridor lined with mirrors draped in cloth. I asked why they were covered. She whispered, "Mr. Quinn believes reflections can steal what the living are not ready to lose." In my room, the walls felt alive, and the wallpaper shimmered faintly when I moved my hand across it, revealing lines of symbols hidden beneath the paint marks of protection, twisted into perversions of their original form. Someone had built a lattice of control around this family. I traced one mark with my fingertip and felt a pulse respond from the other side of the wall. It was not random, it was communication. Footsteps stopped outside my door. Ethan's voice came softly. "Are you hurt?" "No," I said. "But your family is sicker than you know." He entered, eyes scanning the broken lamp on the table. I thought the curse was focused on me. "It is," I said. "But this house breathes through you. Whatever touches you, touches it. Every room has been imprinted with echoes of fear. It draws energy from the people who live here, feeding the pattern." He rubbed the bridge of his nose. "You make it sound alive." "It is alive," I said, "because someone gave it intention." A log cracked in the fireplace. Shadows crawled along the walls. For a heartbeat, the air between us tightened, charged by something more than danger. Ethan looked at me with the wary gratitude of a man who has found truth where he expected deception. "You should not be here alone," he said. "If Harper is involved, he will not forgive interference." "I am not here to be forgiven," I said. "I am here to end this." He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "My grandfather believes every curse is born from guilt. If he is right, what guilt am I paying for?" "Perhaps none of yours," I said. "Perhaps another's." The firelight cut our faces in halves of gold and shadow. In that divided light, I saw the outline of something larger forming an inheritance not of wealth, but of doom, passed quietly from one generation to the next. Ethan's blood carried it. Harper's ambition fed it. And somewhere in the house, the source waited, patient as night. When he left, I sat by the window and opened my notebook. The wind outside rattled the branches, and the river below whispered its endless argument with the city. I wrote one sentence: "The curse is a design, not an accident." As I closed the book, a reflection flickered in the glass. For an instant, I saw not my own face, but another identical, watching, smiling faintly as if she already knew how the story would end. Morning broke gray over the Hudson, dragging a curtain of fog across the windows of the Cole estate. The house was too quiet, the kind of silence that follows confession or crime. I had not slept. The reflection I saw last night still lingered behind my eyelids. A face that was mine but not mine, a whisper of a truth I was not yet ready to name. I met Ethan in the conservatory. He stood among the glass and vines, watering plants that had already been overwatered. His hands moved without awareness, his eyes fixed on the pale outline of the river beyond the glass. "You look worse than last night," I said. "I dreamt of falling chandeliers," he replied. "Apparently, even my nightmares lack originality." "You are still alive," I said softly. "That is progress." He glanced up, exhaustion tempered by a dry smile. "Do you ever tire of fighting storms that are not your own?" "Always," I said. "But if I stopped, they would drown someone else." We sat across from each other at a glass table. I unfolded the pages I had filled through the night, sketches of symbols, diagrams of energy patterns, and lists of recurring accidents traced to time and location. Each mark pointed back to the same core, Harper Quinn. Ethan studied the papers. "You think he is behind it?" "I do not think," I said. "I know. But proving it will require a language he understands, evidence, not instinct." "What kind of evidence?" "The measurable kind. Probability, sequence, psychology." I looked up. "If someone is manipulating you, they are using logic wrapped in illusion. That means we can track it." He nodded slowly. "Then show me how." We spent the morning mapping the misfortunes that had surrounded Ethan for the past year. I asked for every calendar entry, meeting record, and security feed. He gave me access to it all without hesitation. The walls between us, so carefully maintained, began to soften. Each event followed a strange symmetry. Moments of success followed immediately by small disasters, as if each triumph demanded a sacrifice. Server crashes after product launches, accidents after board approvals, near-death moments after celebrations. Someone had woven a pattern of retribution into his life. Someone is adjusting probability, I said. A subtle form of conditioning. Every time you approach stability, chaos interrupts, forcing you back into fear. Over time, fear becomes obedience. Ethan leaned back, the realization heavy in his eyes. He is training me to fail. Exactly, I said, and you have complied perfectly. He gave a sharp, humorless laugh. Then how do we break obedience? By turning observation into interference, I said. If we record what happens instead of reacting, the pattern loses its hold. A curse thrives on attention. When you stop feeding it fear, it begins to starve. You make it sound simple. It is not simple, I said, but it is possible. By afternoon, the mansion had begun to hum again, servants walking, phones ringing, doors closing too quietly. I felt the vibration of the curse rising, restless at being exposed. The lamps flickered even in daylight. I had the sense of being watched by something unseen yet intelligent. Walter Quinn summoned us to his study before dinner. He was seated by the window, wrapped in a heavy shawl. His eyes had the sharp clarity of someone who had lived long enough to distrust both faith and fortune. I felt it again this morning, he said without preamble. The air changed. Something moved through these halls. It is the residue, I said. When power is challenged, it shifts to defend itself. Walter nodded once. And the source? I hesitated. Ethan's gaze met mine. We have not found it yet, I said. Harper entered at that moment, perfect timing disguised as coincidence. Still chasing ghosts, Doctor? He asked. You must be running out of corners to search. I never run out of corners, I said evenly. Only patience. Walter's eyes flicked between us. Enough, he said. If there is an enemy in this house, I expect it to be revealed by truth, not by arrogance. Truth, Harper said, pouring himself a glass of wine. A fascinating word, especially when defined by those who invent it. Ethan rose suddenly. Harper, you will provide me access to the corporate research lab. All of it. Security clearance, files, everything. Harper's glass froze midway to his lips. On what authority? Mine, Ethan said. And if you refuse, I will take it as an admission of guilt. For a heartbeat, tension filled the air like static. Then Harper smiled. Of course, cousin. Whatever helps you sleep. He left, footsteps echoing down the hall like punctuation marks in a threat. When the door closed, Walter exhaled. You have awakened something in him, he said to me. Pray you can control what follows. And that night, Ethan and I pored over the data retrieved from the company archives. Among the files was a private research project funded by Harper Studies on neurological conditioning, probability modeling, and subliminal stimuli. The patterns mirrored the sequence of Ethan's disasters exactly. Harper is using science as sorcery, I said. He is programming failure into your perception. Every time something goes wrong, your brain reinforces the expectation that it will. A curse written in code, Ethan whispered. Yes, I said, and the longer it runs, the deeper it writes itself into your life. We worked until the first light of dawn bled into the horizon. When I finally looked at him, exhaustion had softened his edges, revealing something I had not seen before, vulnerability, raw and unguarded. Do you ever regret helping people like me? He asked. Regret is a luxury I cannot afford, I said. When you carry the darkness of others, you learn to live without mirrors. He studied me for a moment, then said quietly, Then let me be your mirror. The words caught me off guard. For a second, the air between us felt less like tension and more like possibility. But before I could respond, a loud crack split the quiet. The window shattered inward, spraying shards of glass across the desk. Ethan pulled me down just as a fragment sliced through the papers we had gathered. Outside, the night was still. No wind, no motion, only silence. I touched the edge of the broken glass. The cut on my palm bled a thin line of crimson. Beneath it, the faint shimmer of energy pulsed deliberate, directed. This was not the storm, I said. This was a message. Ethan looked at the ruined window. What does it say? That the curse knows we are watching, I said, and it has decided to watch back. The fog pressed harder against the glassless frame. Somewhere beyond it, I felt eyes that had been waiting far longer than either of us could comprehend. The science of misfortune had just become personal. The next morning, the city woke beneath a sky the color of steel. Rain had not yet fallen, but the clouds gathered low, heavy with unfinished promises. I could feel pressure in the air, the weight of something approaching. The coal estate hummed faintly, as though it too sensed the tension. The curse was not hiding anymore, it was moving. Ethan and I sat in his office, surrounded by half-repaired windows and taped documents. The shattered glass from last night had been replaced, but the air still carried a quiet pulse of unrest. You said the curse was watching us, he said. How does misfortune watch? Through repetition, I answered. Through reflection. It waits until you believe you have found control and then reminds you that you never had any. He stared at me, jaw tightening. So we let it wait? No, I said. We hunt it. I had spent the early hours combing through the patterns left behind by the shattered glass. Each shard bore traces of identical energy signatures. But one piece smaller, darker, carried something foreign, a pulse unlike the rest. When I examined it beneath ultraviolet light, faint markings appeared. 2 parallel lines mirrored. This was deliberate, I said, sliding the shard toward him. A signature, perhaps. 2 lines facing each other, twins. Ethan's brows drew together. You think Harper has an accomplice. I think he has help from someone who understands me too well. He waited for me to continue, but I did not. I could not tell him yet about the face I had seen in the reflection, the woman who wore my features like a borrowed mask. We left the estate after noon. The city felt sharper than usual, edges glinting with hidden meaning. Ethan drove this time, refusing the company chauffeur. It was a small rebellion, but it steadied him. Our destination was a hospital in Brooklyn, one of the charity foundations managed by Cole Enterprises. Several years ago, Harper had financed a neuroscience wing there, specializing in behavior modification and subconscious therapy. If the curse was born from science, its cradle was here. The building's corridors smelled of antiseptic and whispered secrets. As we walked through, doctors greeted Ethan with cautious smiles. His name carried authority, but his presence carried tension. In the research lab, rows of monitors displayed brainwave data scrolling endlessly. A young researcher approached us, startled to see the CEO in person. Mr. Cole, she stammered. We weren't expecting. You are now, Ethan said. Show us Harlequin's private archive. Her hesitation lasted only a second. Fear of losing her job outweighed fear of disobedience. She led us to a secure terminal, entered several passwords, and stepped aside. On the screen, a list appeared, Project ELI. What does it stand for? I asked. Emotional Logic Integration, she said quietly. It was a study designed to link human decision-making with predictive algorithms. Mr. Harper said it would revolutionize corporate management. But after the trial subjects experienced hallucinations and recurring nightmares, the project was closed. I opened one of the files. Charts of brain patterns, emotional responses, and sequences of subliminal triggers filled the screen. At the bottom of each report was a name, Ethan Cole. He experimented on you, I whispered. Ethan's face went still, his eyes narrowing to ice. I never consented. Consent is irrelevant to those who believe control is salvation, I said. He used your own mind as the anchor for his experiment. Every failure you have endured was scripted into you. The lights above us flickered. For an instant, I saw a shadow move across the reflection in the glass partition, tall, graceful, unmistakably feminine. My pulse quickened. Emily, Ethan said, but the shadow was gone. We copied the files and left the hospital without a word. The rain finally broke, heavy and relentless, drumming against the car roof like warning drums. Halfway across the bridge, Ethan's phone rang. He answered and his expression darkened. "Grandfather collapsed again," he said. By the time we reached the estate, the storm had swallowed the sky. The house was chaos, servants rushing, voices echoing. I followed Ethan up the stairs to Walter Quinn's bedroom. The old man lay pale and still, his breathing shallow. A nurse adjusted the oxygen mask, whispering numbers that meant nothing but sounded urgent. I touched Walter's wrist. His pulse flickered weakly under my fingers. The same energy that had wrapped itself around Ethan now pulsed faintly through him. The curse was branching, spreading like infection. Ethan's voice trembled. "Do something." I closed my eyes and reached deeper than I ever had before. The air thickened. The world narrowed to a single thread connecting life and loss. I pulled, drawing the black current out of Walter's body and into mine. It burned like frost, searing veins that were never meant to carry such weight. When I opened my eyes, the monitor steadied. Color returned to the old man's face. Ethan's relief was brief. It shifted to alarm as I staggered backward. "Emily." He caught me before I fell. My chest ached as though lightning had nested beneath my ribs. "It is fine," I gasped. "It is contained." "Contained in you," he said. I did not deny it. The curse inside me writhed like a living thing, its voice whispering fragments I could almost understand: resentment, envy, familiarity. "You took what was mine." Walter stirred, his eyes opening slowly. "She saved me," he murmured. "Do not let her go." Then his gaze shifted past us, to something neither of us could see. "There are two of her," he whispered. "Two faces. One light, one shadow." Ethan and I froze. He turned to me. "What does he mean?" Before I could answer, thunder split the sky. The lights flickered and died. In the sudden darkness, a laugh rippled through the hallway. A woman's laugh, soft and cold, echoing from nowhere and everywhere. I knew that sound. It had followed me in dreams, in mirrors, in the quiet between heartbeats. Ethan reached for me. "Who is that?" I met his eyes. My twin. The word hung between us like a verdict. Lightning flared through the windows, illuminating the corridor for a heartbeat. Standing at the end of the hall was a woman in a black coat, her hair a mirror of mine, her smile calm and cruel. "Hello, sister," she said. "You have been busy stealing my destiny." And then she vanished with the thunder, leaving only the echo of her laughter and the unmistakable promise of a reckoning yet to come. The storm that had carried my sister's laughter into the night did not pass. It lingered above the Cole estate for days, coiling around the house like a serpent, waiting for movement. The air refused to clear, heavy with electricity, humming with questions I could not yet ask. Her name returned to me slowly, like a wound reopening. Lydia Hart, the twin I had lost before memory began. The one my mother whispered about in her final hours, saying only, "You must never look too long in the mirror." I had thought it was grief. Now I understood it was a warning. Ethan had demanded an explanation the moment the lights returned. But how does one explain a shadow that was born beside you? I told him what little I knew, that Lydia and I had both been born with the same ability to absorb misfortune, but only one of us had survived the first storm that followed our birth, or so everyone believed. He listened in silence, the expression on his face caught somewhere between disbelief and fear. "You mean to tell me," he said at last, "that there are two of you walking the same city, carrying the same curse?" "Not the same," I said. "Mine heals. Hers consumes. And she wants you dead. She wants to be the only one who exists." He turned toward the window, his reflection fractured by the rain. "Then she will come again." "She already has," I said. "Every time something has gone wrong, every disaster that followed you, it was her touch amplifying what Harper began." Sure. Ethan exhaled slowly. "Then we fight both of them." I almost laughed. "You cannot fight what you cannot see." "Then we will make her visible." 2 nights later, Ethan hosted a gala at the Cole Tower downtown. He called it a charity benefit, but the guest list read like a battlefield. Every major shareholder, rival, and member of the Quinn family would be there. The idea was simple: bring the curse into the light. Are you certain this will not backfire? I asked as we arrived, the elevator opening onto a sea of light and sound. It might, he said. But I would rather face chaos than keep pretending it is not watching me. I wore black plain, sharp, unadorned. The reflection that greeted me in the mirrored elevator doors looked steadier than I felt. Somewhere out there, Lydia was likely watching, perhaps even standing among the guests. I would know her the way I knew my own heartbeat. The music swelled as we stepped onto the floor. Laughter clinked like glass. Cameras flashed. Ethan's arm brushed mine, not by accident. The public saw the gesture and interpreted it instantly. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. You could have warned me, I whispered. That you are my fiancé tonight? He smiled, perfectly composed. Consider it a strategic maneuver. If we want the enemy to show itself, we must give it something to envy. Pretending to love you is not a strategy, I said. He leaned closer. Then do not pretend. The orchestra drowned out my breath. For a moment, the chaos of the city receded, replaced by the fragile illusion that this was only a party, that the world was ordinary. But illusions, like curses, never last. Halfway through the evening, the lights dimmed for a toast. Ethan lifted his glass. To family, he said. To survival. At that exact second, the crystal chandelier above us shivered. The lights blinked once, twice, and then without warning, every bulb burst. Screams tore through the room as sparks rained down. Guests stumbled in panic. The sound was deafening. I pulled Ethan away from the falling glass, the memory of the last chandelier echoing in my bones. Smoke filled the air. Emergency lights flickered on, casting the ballroom in blood-red glow. And there, amid the chaos, I saw her Lydia standing calmly beside Harper Quinn. Her hand rested on his arm like an ornament, her expression serene. She looked exactly like me, only colder. Her smile was patient, practiced, the smile of someone who had been waiting for an audience. Ethan followed my gaze. His breath caught. God, he whispered. It's you. It is not, I said. Harper's voice carried across the room. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. Just a power surge. His charm slid over the panic like oil on water. Only I noticed the slight curl of satisfaction at the corner of his mouth. Lydia's eyes met mine. She raised her glass in a silent toast, and the nearest candle guttered out. The security team restored order within minutes. No one was hurt, but the message had been delivered. Ethan's plan had worked too well. She was here, he said later, as we stood alone in the corridor behind the ballroom. Yes, I said. And she wanted you to see her. He ran a hand through his hair. Why show herself now? Because she thinks she has already won. He turned to me, jaw tight. Then we show her she is wrong. By morning, the tabloids were ablaze with headlines about the Cole family curse. Harper feigned outrage, publicly blaming faulty wiring. Privately, he sent Ethan a single message. She is beautiful when she smiles beside you. Ethan crushed the phone in his hand. He is taunting us. Let him, I said. Pride makes predators careless. That afternoon, Walter Quinn summoned us to his bedside. He looked stronger than he had in days, but his voice carried the brittle calm of someone who had made peace with ghosts. I have seen her, he said, eyes distant. Your sister. She came into my dreams. She said she is the rightful heir to what you call balance. She lies, I said. He nodded weakly. I know, but lies become truth when enough people fear them. You must end this before she binds herself to Harper completely. Together, they will be unstoppable. Ethan's hand found mine. His grip was firm, grounding. Then, tell us how, he said. Walter looked at me. You already know how, child. The same way you heal others. You take the darkness into yourself, and this time you do not let it go. I shook my head. If I do that, I will not survive. Perhaps, he said. But if you do not, none of us will. The old man's words fell like stones into the silence. When we left his room, Ethan stopped me in the hallway. There will be another way, he said. There always is. Not with curses, I said. They demand payment, always. Then I will pay it. You cannot. Watch me. For the first time since meeting him, I saw fear in his eyes, not of death, but of losing control, of losing me. The curse had made us opposites of what we once were. I carried too much hope, and he too much faith. Outside, thunder rolled across the river again, softer this time, as if the storm itself were catching its breath. I looked into the dark glass of the window and caught my reflection, two faces, for just an instant, overlapping like a prophecy. Lydia was still there, watching from the other side, and in her eyes was a promise I could not ignore. This story would not end with one of us walking away. It would end with one of us erased. The city did not sleep after the gala. Rumors multiplied faster than truth. The cursed heir, the twin of misfortune, the phantom doctor who collects bad luck. Every headline twisted our lives into mythology. Inside the Cole estate, silence was our only defense. The servants whispered prayers under their breath. Mirrors were covered again. Even Walter Quinn's cane began to tremble when the wind touched the windows. But I had no time for fear. Harper and Lydia had shown their faces. The game was no longer played in shadows. The question now was who would move first. Ethan sat across from me in the study, sleeves rolled to his elbows, fatigue hiding behind controlled composure. The documents from Project ELI lay scattered across the desk proof of Harper's experiment, though not yet evidence that could survive the court of public opinion. You cannot win this battle with logic, I said. You have to break the story they are writing about you. He glanced at the headlines on his tablet. Cole Empire crumbles under family curse. Twin witch returns to claim blood debt. He closed it with a snap. Then we rewrite it. How? By proving the curse is real and then destroying it in front of everyone. That is not rewriting, I said. That is suicide. He smiled faintly. It might also be faith. I left the estate that afternoon under a false name, disguised as a researcher hired to audit Cole Enterprises. Logan Turner met me at a cafe near Central Park. He had been my friend long before I became the curse collector. His face carried the calm of someone who had always known the world was stranger than it admitted. I heard about the gala, he said, sliding a laptop across the table. You sure know how to throw a party. I need your help, I said. Harper's files were just the beginning. There is something bigger buried in his private servers, something Lydia is helping him protect. He opened the laptop, fingers moving quickly. You think they digitized the ritual? Not exactly. She was raised outside this world. She will want permanence, not chaos. If she's merging science and energy, she will need a stabilizer, a neural code. Like a digital anchor? Yes, the curse cannot exist without one. It needs something to hold on to. He nodded slowly. Then we find the anchor. We worked for hours. The rain began again, soft but constant, tracing ghostly fingers down the cafe window. Around midnight, Logan's screen flickered and filled with cascading lines of code. At the bottom was a name, L.Y. Dia Hart. He looked up. She registered herself as a consultant for the project. The system lists her as the co-creator. I stared at the name. She embedded her own energy into the network. She doesn't just control the curse, she lives through it. Logan's voice softened. Then destroying the system might destroy her. That is the idea, I said. He studied me for a long moment. And you? If she dies, I might go with her. Twin energy does not separate cleanly. He exhaled. You always find the hardest road. The hardest ones are the only roads that matter. When I returned to the estate, Ethan was waiting near the staircase, his expression unreadable. You left without protection. I had to. You could have told me. I could have, I said. But you would have followed. I would have, he admitted, and you would have hated that. A fragile quiet stretched between us. The tension that had grown since the night of the chandelier seemed to hum just beneath our skin. He stepped closer. You cannot keep doing this alone, Emily. Alone is how I survive. No, he said. It is how you disappear. For a moment, the world narrowed to the distance between us. The scent of rain lingered on his coat, faint and clean. His hand brushed my cheek, a brief touch that held everything we had not said. "If you go down, I go with you," he whispered. Before I could respond, the house lights flickered once, twice, then went dark. A scream echoed from the second floor. We ran. Walter's nurse stood outside his room, pale and shaking. "He is gone," she said. "Someone took him." Inside, the bed was empty. The windows were open to the storm. On the wall above the headboard, drawn in water and ash, was a single word. "Balance. Lydia." Ethan's voice was low, deliberate. "She took him to bait us. It has lesson." "She wants me," I said. "But she knows you will follow. Then she will get both of us." We tracked the signal from the house's security system. Every camera had gone black except one, the private tunnel, leading to the old greenhouse behind the estate. Its door stood open. Lightning cut across the sky as we stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of earth and decay. Plants had long since withered, their stems curling like bones. At the far end of the room, a single lantern burned, casting gold light across glass fragments arranged in a perfect circle. In the center sat Walter Quinn, bound but unharmed, his eyes closed in prayer. And behind him, Lydia. She wore white this time, as if to mock me. The same face, the same eyes, but the stillness of her expression carried something inhuman. "You came," she said. "Let him go," I demanded. "Why should I?" Her voice was calm, almost tender. "He carries what belongs to me." What are you talking about?" "My birthright," she said. "When I was left behind, he sealed half of my essence inside your world. He hid me in his bloodline, hoping I would fade. But I grew in shadow. And now, I have come to reclaim what is mine." Ethan stepped forward. "You are hurting him." "I am liberating him," she replied. "And soon I will liberate her." Her gaze slid to me. "Sister, do you not feel it? The pull between us. We were meant to be one." We were meant to be separate," I said. "That is why we survived." She smiled, and the lantern flame doubled. 2 tongues of light dancing side by side. "You heal the world by taking its pain. I will heal it by owning its chaos. Together, we could be complete." "No," I said. "Together, we would end everything." Her expression hardened. "Then we end each other." The lantern exploded. The greenhouse plunged into darkness. Glass rained down like falling stars. When the smoke cleared, Lydia was gone, and so was Walter. Only her voice remained, floating through the storm. "Find me at the beginning, sister. Find me where the world first broke." Ethan turned to me. "What does that mean?" I looked toward the horizon, where the river met the city lights. "It means she is going home." "To your home?" "Yes," I said, "to the place where we were born." The storm answered with thunder, deep and final. The past had opened its gates, and the road back would demand everything I had left to give. The road back to my birthplace cut through miles of forgotten countryside, where the city's noise fell away and the world remembered silence. Ethan drove without speaking, his hands gripping the wheel with the quiet certainty of a man who no longer believed in coincidence. The rain followed us halfway, then thinned into mist, as if even the storm hesitated to cross that border. We reached the remnants of what had once been the Hart family estate by dawn. The house was no longer a house, only a skeleton of timber and brick wrapped in ivy and time. Its windows were hollow sockets, its front door leaning open like a mouth mid-scream. This was where Lydia and I had been born. This was where our mother died. Ethan stepped beside me, his breath visible in the cold air. "This place feels wrong." "It always did," I said. "The walls remember everything." I'll stay up there." He followed me inside. The floorboards moaned under our weight. Dust clung to the air like fog. On the far wall, behind layers of soot, the faint outline of a circle had been carved into the stone, 2 lines intersecting, mirrored, identical. The symbol of the twins. "This was our cradle," I said. "My mother believed that twins shared one soul. When we were born, the midwife said, I took all the breath, and Lydia took all the shadow. Ethan traced the edge of the circle. And your mother tried to separate you. She succeeded for a time. I looked down at the floor, where the boards were burned in a perfect ring. But separation is not peace, it is merely delay. From somewhere deeper in the house came a low hum, metallic, steady, mechanical. Ethan tensed. That is not wind. No, I said, it is her. We followed the sound through a narrow corridor until we reached what used to be the cellar. A steel door stood where stone should have been. Modern locks glinted beneath a film of dust. Lydia had rebuilt the ruins into a machine. The door opened at my touch. Inside, the room was lit by dozens of suspended screens, their glow turning the air a ghostly blue. On each screen, fragments of data flickered Ethan's face, my own, images from Harper's experiments, snippets of our voices captured from hidden devices. At the center of it all stood Lydia. She turned slowly, calm, beautiful, monstrous. Welcome home, she said. You brought him. How poetic. Ethan stepped forward. Release my grandfather. He is beyond you now, Lydia said. He rests upstairs between sleep and silence. I only borrowed what I needed. Her eyes found mine. You feel it, do you not? The pull between us grows stronger every second. The world cannot sustain two carriers. It must choose one. I will not let you feed on them anymore, I said. You think you are different from me? She asked. You absorb their misfortune. I absorb their weakness. Both of us take what others cannot bear. The only difference is that I stopped pretending it was noble. You are killing people. I am freeing them from their illusions. Ethan's voice cut through the tension. Harper used you. He built this to control her, not to save you. Lydia smiled unfazed. Harper believed he commanded me. In truth, I let him believe it. Now he sleeps in the dark corners of his own mind. I left him there an offering to the balance you worship. The screens behind her shifted, showing a looping image. Harper's body seated at a computer desk, eyes open but empty. Ethan flinched. God. I stepped closer. You cannot keep this alive. The system will collapse with or without you. She tilted her head. That is why you are here, sister. You will stabilize it for me. One soul cannot hold this much power, but two can. Join me, and I will make you eternal. Her voice softened, almost kind. You could rest, Emily. No more suffering, no more fear. Together, we could fix everything that breaks. For a heartbeat, I wanted to believe her. The fatigue of years pressed against my ribs. The thought of silence of peace was intoxicating. But peace built on ruin is not peace. It is surrender. No, I said. I choose to end it. Her smile faded. Then you choose death. The hum in the air deepened. Energy gathered around her like a storm trapped in a body. The symbols on the floor began to glow, twin circles spinning in opposite directions. Ethan grabbed my arm. What is happening? She is merging the system with herself, I said. She wants to become the curse. The lights flared, and the room erupted in motion. Screens shattered one by one. Cables writhed like snakes. Lydia's voice rose above the noise, layered and echoing. You cannot destroy what you are. And so if then from a self, this Morris, I as the waiting a friend. I closed my eyes and reached for the energy within me, the residue of every curse I had ever absorbed, every wound I had carried for others. It burned as I summoned it, coiling up from my chest in ribbons of silver light. Ethan's voice came from somewhere behind me. Emily, stop, it will kill you. It is the only way, I said. If she becomes the curse, the world will fracture. I have to reverse the current. I stepped into the circle opposite Lydia. The twin symbols blazed in response. Her face twisted with fury. You think you can contain me? I do not have to, I said. I just have to balance you. I raised my hand. The energy collided between us, her darkness against my light, her hunger against my restraint. The air screamed. Walls buckled, every screen exploded outward in a storm of glass and light. Ethan shouted my name, but I could barely hear him. Lydia's voice was inside my head now. We are one! We have always been one! I felt her memories pour through me, our birth, our separation, her years in shadow. For a moment, compassion cut through my fear. She had been alone, unseen, unloved. She had turned pain into power, because no one had offered her anything else. I am sorry, I whispered. The words weakened her. The energy faltered. I took the chance. Channeling everything I had left, I drew the curse inward, forcing the twin energies to merge inside me. Pain tore through every nerve, white and endless. Then, silence. When I opened my eyes, the room was still. The lights were gone. The air smelled of ozone and rain. Lydia lay on the floor, her body pale, peaceful, fading like smoke. She smiled faintly. At last, she whispered, balance. Her form dissolved into light, which sank into my skin. The twin circle on the floor dimmed and vanished. Ethan knelt beside me. Emily, he said, voice shaking. Can you hear me? I tried to speak, but only nodded. My limbs felt weightless, my pulse distant. I had done it. I had ended her. But I could feel it already, the curse settling inside me, its vast weight threading through my veins like molten stone. Ethan's hands trembled as he lifted me. We are going home, he said. The last thing I remembered before darkness took me was the sound of his heart beating against mine, steady, desperate, alive. And somewhere far away, in the folds of that silence, Lydia's whisper lingered like an echo that refused to die. Balance is never the end, sister. It is only the beginning. When I awoke, light spilled across the ceiling in trembling patterns. For a moment, I thought it was morning sun, but it was the pulse of the monitors surrounding me. The scent of antiseptic hung thick in the air. Someone had wrapped my arms in gauze, though I remembered no wounds. The last thing I recalled was Lydia's face dissolving into light, and then nothing. Ethan sat by the window, his back to me. The sky behind him was dark, but the faint reflection of monitors painted blue across his face. He looked like a man holding vigil for something he feared was already gone. How long have I been here? My voice was thin, like a thread stretched to breaking. He turned immediately, relief and exhaustion mixing in his eyes. 3 days, he said. You stopped breathing twice. The doctors called it a neurological overload. I called it a miracle that you are still here. Lydia? His silence was answer enough. Gone, he said finally. When the house collapsed, she vanished. The foundation burned itself to glass. There was nothing left but you. I swallowed the ache in my throat. And the curse? Ethan hesitated. That is harder to answer. He walked to the side of the bed and took my hand. His skin was warm, grounding. Since the night we found you, nothing strange has happened. No broken mirrors, no sudden accidents. The city feels quiet. Maybe too quiet. It is as if misfortune has gone still. That is not peace, I said. That is suspension. What do you mean? It is inside me, Ethan. Lydia is gone, but her energy remains. So does mine. The curse has no place left to go. It sleeps, but it is waiting. His grip tightened. Then we make sure it never wakes. As her leader, by the time I could walk again, spring had begun to fold itself over the city. Rain returned to its ordinary rhythm, and the air carried the scent of wet pavement instead of smoke. Ethan insisted I stay in the coal penthouse, claiming it was safer there. I had stopped arguing. Exhaustion had become a second heartbeat. We spent our days pretending normalcy. He returned to the office. I read, cooked, listened to the sound of him pacing in the evenings. But silence carries truth in its own way. Each night, the air grew heavier, as if the building itself remembered the weight I carried. On the 5th night, I woke to the sound of glass cracking. I turned, expecting to find a broken lamp, but the crack came from the mirror across the room. Thin fractures spidered through its surface, glowing faintly red. My reflection blinked a heartbeat slower than I did. Lydia's voice filled the space between thought and sound. Did you really think balance meant absence? I pressed my palm to the glass. You are dead. So were you. Once. The reflection smiled and the mirror cleared. The fractures healed. Only my face remained. But the whisper stayed in my chest like an echo trapped in bone. At breakfast, Ethan noticed the pallor I tried to hide. You look haunted, he said. I am, I answered, just quietly. He poured coffee for both of us. Tell me, the curse is restless. Lydia's energy is not fading. She is becoming memory, and memory is the most dangerous form of survival. What do we do? Contain it again, properly this time. A ritual of reversal, draw the energy out of me and return it to neutrality. He frowned. You mean to perform it alone? It must be me, I said. The power is bound to my pulse. Then I am going with you. I met his gaze. You cannot help me with the magic, Ethan. He smiled without humor. Then I will help with the silence. ATU. That night we returned to the ruins of the Hart estate. The walls that had survived were streaked with soot, the smell of rain and ash still clinging to the ground. In the center of what had once been the cellar, a single circle remained burned into the earth. The twin sigils had faded, but their scars lingered. This is where it began, I said. It should also be where it ends. Ethan unpacked the small bag he had brought: salt, candles, a silver bowl of water. Tell me what to do. I'll whiz. Stay inside the circle, but do not touch me when the light starts, I said. If the curse leaves me, it will look for another host. I will not let it find you. He hesitated, then nodded. And if it tries to take you, then you will let it. Never, he said. I did not argue. I knelt at the circle's center and drew a line of salt across the ground. The air thickened, humming with the memory of power. I closed my eyes and began the chant, the same ancient cadence my mother once whispered over our cradles. My voice trembled at first, then steadied. The wind rose, the earth beneath the circle vibrated. The candles bent toward me. I felt the energy stirring inside my chest, waking like something starved. It clawed upward, heat turning to light, light turning to pain. Ethan called my name, but the world had already narrowed to sound and pulse. Lydia's voice bloomed inside my skull. You cannot live without me. Yes, I gasped. I can. You need balance. I will create it myself. I drove both palms into the ground. The circle blazed white, the symbols reappearing in flame. The curse surged through me, fighting release, dragging Lydia's essence with it. For a heartbeat, I saw her again, translucent, beautiful, unmoored. You will regret this, she whispered. Maybe, I said, but I will finally rest. It's fine. With a final breath, I forced the curse downward, back into the earth. The light imploded, sucking the air from the room. When sound returned, the candles had gone out, and smoke coiled around the circle like the ghost of a storm. Ethan was already kneeling beside me, his hands on my shoulders. Emily, speak to me. I looked up at him, my lungs burned, but the air was clear. The hum of misfortune that had haunted me for years was gone. The silence was perfect. Is it over? He asked. I nodded. For now. He exhaled a shaky laugh and pulled me into his arms. You saved us again. I rested my head against his chest, listening to the heartbeat that refused to surrender. No, I said. We saved each other. We left the ruins at dawn. The first sunlight in weeks broke through the clouds, painting the fields in gold. I turned once to look back at the house. The smoke had cleared. Only a faint shimmer remained above the circle, like heat rising from stone. Ethan followed my gaze. Will it stay sealed? I do not know, I said. Balance does not promise permanence. It only promises the chance to begin again. He took my hand. Then let us begin. The city awaited us beyond the horizon, rebuilt and humming, unaware that somewhere beneath its foundations, the story of two sisters had finally ended, one in light, one in shadow, both bound forever by the curse that had made them whole and torn them apart. And as the car carried us away, I thought I heard it again. Faint and distant, the sound of Lydia's laughter mingling with the wind. It was not malice this time, only memory. And memory, I realize, is how balance survives. New York woke beneath a clean sky. For the first time in months, the city felt weightless, as if the world had finally exhaled. The air carried no tremor, no echo of broken glass, no whisper of misfortune. Cars honked, people argued on sidewalks, steam curled from vents, the ordinary chaos of life. I had never loved it more. Ethan and I walked through the streets. Like survivors of a storm, everyone else had already forgotten. He still wore the calm armor of a man used to control, but his steps had softened. Mine perhaps had grown heavier. I could feel the quiet ache of what I had left behind Lydia's shadow, the hum of the curse, the strange silence inside my own chest where power had once lived. "You have not said a word since breakfast," Ethan said as we turned the corner toward the East River. "I am not sure there are words left," I replied. "When the noise disappears, so does language." He smiled faintly. "Then we will live in silence." "That would never suit you." "Perhaps not," he admitted. "But it might suit me if you were there." "That is possible." I looked at him, sunlight striking his hair to gold, and thought how strange it was that the man who had once carried every disaster now seemed the calmest soul in the city. The coal tower reopened that week, shareholders returned, papers were signed, and the world pretended the curse had been a rumor. Harper's name was buried in confidential files, his projects erased. Walter Quinn was buried too, but with peace on his face. The last thing he had said before slipping away was a whisper that stayed with me still. Balance always finds the ones who earn it. Ethan took control of the company fully. The boardroom meetings that once vibrated with tension now felt strangely human. Laughter echoed through the hallways. People shook his hand without fear of shattered glass or sudden catastrophe. The empire that had nearly destroyed itself on superstition learned to breathe again. He insisted I remain by his side, not as a healer, but as a partner. I accepted, though a part of me knew I would never belong to any structure made of glass and ambition. Still, the quiet between us had become its own kind of home. One evening, after the office emptied, Ethan called me to the rooftop garden. The city glowed beneath us, rivers of light running through its veins. He stood near the edge, holding a small box in his hand. "Do not tell me that is what I think it is," I said. He opened it. The ring inside was simple, silver, unpolished, familiar. "You left this behind," he said. "I thought it burned." "It did. I found it in the ashes. It refused to melt." I stared at the ring. It was the one he had given me during our false engagement, back when everything between us had been a disguise. Now it carried the quiet truth of everything we had survived. "Ethan." He stepped closer. "I am not asking for ceremony or promises. I am asking for tomorrow. Whatever that looks like." The words were not dramatic, not the language of novels or vows. They were simple, and that made them real. I took the ring and slipped it on. It fit as if it had been waiting. Weeks passed. I began to teach again quiet sessions in a small office downtown, guiding people through patterns of energy and luck. I never spoke of curses, only of balance, of the way the world breathes in rhythm with our choices. They came in whispers at first, clients who had lost too much, who could not understand why their lives kept folding in on themselves. I listened, as someone once listened to me. Ethan visited sometimes, leaning in the doorway, watching me work with a smile that no longer hid sorrow. He said he came for lunch, but I think he came to be reminded that light could live beside darkness without being devoured. One afternoon, a delivery arrived with no sender listed. Inside was a single mirror, small and round, its surface impossibly clear. A note lay beside it in handwriting that was my own. "For when you forget what balance looks like." I placed the mirror on my desk. When I looked into it, I saw only my reflection, tired, content, alive. Yet for an instant, just as the sunlight shifted across the glass, a second face appeared beside mine, smiling faintly. Lydia. She was not haunting me, she was reminding me. The curse had not died, it had transformed. Balance does not erase its shadow. It learns to live with it. I whispered to the reflection, "Rest now." The second image faded, leaving only me. That night, Ethan and I walked through Central Park. The trees whispered softly in the wind, and the city lights flickered through their branches like constellations. He took my hand without words. "Do you think it is truly over?" he asked. "Nothing ends," I said. "It changes shape." "And what shape will we become?" I smiled. "Something ordinary, I hope." He laughed quietly. "Ordinary sounds miraculous." We reached the edge of the park where the skyline opened above the river. The water reflected the city's heartbeat, light shimmering over dark, order dancing with chaos. For the first time, I saw beauty in imperfection. As the wind rose, I felt a familiar hum deep within my chest, softer now, like a lullaby. It was not fear. It was the rhythm of existence itself, the balance my mother had always spoken of, the harmony Lydia had died seeking, the peace I had almost lost. I turned to Ethan. "Do you hear that?" He listened. "Only the city." "Exactly," I said. "It is alive again." We stood there until the lights dimmed into stars. The world was imperfect, fragile, and endlessly new. I had been born to carry misfortune, to absorb what others could not bear. But now I understood. Balance is not the absence of darkness. It is the courage to hold it without letting it win. When Ethan kissed me, the city did not tremble. The air did not shatter. The world simply continued quiet, steady and kind. And for the first time, so did I.